Hello, everybody. I'm J. Marcelo Vaquero Alvarez, and this is the I Told You podcast. And this is the place where we are going to be talking about all the things that the independent and the mainstream media are failing to tell you in exuberant detail. So if you're a snowflake, this is going to actually hurt your feelings. So let's get to the episode. Today we're going to be talking about is the USA going to become the next Russian province? All right, so the short answer is yes. It actually has already become a Russian province for a lot of states. They just haven't realized it yet. And we have a lot of things that we're actually going to be talking about today. And some of these is probably going to make you feel really uneasy and it's going to make you feel really happy inside because maybe that's what you wanted. So it depends on what your vote and your leanings are. This might be going either way, but the point is that if you thought that you were talking about the red, white, and blue as in the USA, it is not necessarily going to be the same way. It's probably going to be more like the white, red, and blue from Russia. So just notice that some of the things that we are doing, it is going to be looking like we are working on our best interest, but that doesn't necessarily mean that is the case. So anyway, how do I get to base this assessment? Well, just pay attention. All the three branches of government, the executive, the judicial, and the legislative power from the United States of America, they happen to be filled with MAGA loyalists. And the MAGA loyalists, they happen to be repeating Russian state-sponsored talking points verbatim. What does that mean? Okay, so a little bit of geopolitical history in case you were not aware. In Russia, there is state-sponsored media. If you have independent media in Russia, you better be minding your P's and Q's because if you are talking about something that they don't like, they're going to let you know, often in very dramatic ways. What does that mean? Well, it ranges from a fine to imprisonment, and that is what it's being widely reported, at least by the people who've been talking about that. So, do we want that in the USA? Well, it actually has started in some places. Yeah, you haven't realized it when people are going and saying, well, that is fake news. Those are the enemy of the states. Anybody who is actually trying to fact check me and it's inconvenient on the narrative, that is a weaponization of the media or against the media or trying to nationalize certain media areas to bring certain messages that only concur with a particular point of view that a particular group of people want you to believe. So if you think that Trump is actually in charge, well, let me tell you something. Here, let me tell you in this camera. If you think that Trump is in charge, you are naive as fuck, okay? You don't understand how this works. Let's go back to this camera so I can tell you more. All right, so the adversarial forces, they do not care if Trump actually is smart or is not smart. They care to the fact that he has a clout. He has a whole bunch of people who are going to be listening to whatever he says, regardless of whether that is correct or is incorrect, or if it is bombastic, or if he just saying something that is divorced from reality, as long as it sounds appealing to a particular group of people. And a lot of people find that very appealing. So what Russia was after is not really to try to convince Trump. It was not really going after Trump. He was going after Trump's clout. He was going after his followers. And they got it. They got it. Okay? A lot of people, they don't really understand what is the realization of the Russian people whenever they are into that state of how the world revolves around Vladimir Putin. They don't really realize that in the United States. They think, okay, that's great because he's for family values, or he's for traditional family values, or he's against gays, or he's against certain things that you think that you're supposed to be against. Now, you can be against all you want about whatever you don't like, but you have to realize that that is up to a certain point of where your choices are your own, but not somebody else's choices. What does that mean? Okay, so that means that if you don't like something, then don't engage on that and just let the other person live their lives whichever way they want to live it. For example, If you don't like people from same-sex attraction to marry each other, don't marry a person from your same sex. Period. It's just that simple. But if you are going to be curtailing the rights from these people that love each other, not because of whatever you find traditional, but they love each other as two people, that is none of your damn business. But now it is going to become part of everybody's business, just like it is in many of these other countries. It is not about not giving you quote-unquote freedom. It is about controlling you. It is about controlling your thoughts. It's about controlling your actions. And it's about controlling even the mere thought process, okay? So not even just the thought that actually comes to your mind, but how you would be getting into thinking about certain things. Does that make sense? Yeah, probably it's not going to make sense for some people because it's still a little bit too varsity level for them to understand because it's abstract. What does it mean? When it's abstract, that means that it's not concrete. That means that you cannot see it manifested as a box or as an object. It is like a cloud, okay? It's going to be shifting the shapes and it's going to be morphing a lot. That is how propaganda works. And it infiltrates the minds from people in a way that makes them think that they are correct when they're actually really far off the line. So if you think that Trump was actually in charge, well, let me tell you this thing, okay? In the pretty much the very first day after he was announced as the person who won the election in the USA, what did the Russia state media did? What did they do? Okay, what did the Russian media do? They showed naked photos of First Lady Melania Trump in prime time while the entire group of hosts were essentially giggling and just laughing at them. That is a power move. That's a power move not just against Melania, not just against Trump. It is a power move against every woman in America. Let me say that. That's a power move on every woman in America. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that. So let's just that sink in for a little bit. When Trump won in office, he was doing everything that was convenient for Putin and for Russia at the time. So that's why he was not seeing that much level of trouble with him. Why would you be killing the golden goose eggs hatching machine? Trump was giving them everything that they wanted. Why would they want to sabotage that? That's not what they were going to do. They were going to act as though they have some resistance. So the more naive segment of the population say like, oh yeah, Trump is very tough on Russia. Trump is very tough on that. But he was not. He was doing everything that was very convenient for Russia. For example, he was talking shit about NATO all the time. If you don't know what NATO is, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, that was created after World War II because the Soviet Union was expanding communism around the world. Essentially, was creating all these republics behind what it was known as the Iron Curtain, and it was telling a whole bunch of different nations that communism was the better option other than the decadent capitalists around the world. All right? So that was NATO's purpose, was to prevent the Soviet Union at the time from expanding. The Soviet Union collapsed in the 90s because they ran out of money, because it was pretty much a very flawed system either way. And eventually the Russian Federation came to be. A lot of the republics that they were part of the Soviet Union, they disbanded, they became independent. That is, for example, the very first ones, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia in the Baltic. Those were the first states to break off from the Soviet Union. Another one, the biggest one, the one that hurt the most, was the Ukraine. So Ukraine, because that was the breadbasket, and it was this place that was logistically very well placed, not just because of the fertile lands, but because of the proximity to the Mediterranean, going through the Black Sea. There were too many advantages. So the moment that they lost that, that was a huge blow for Russia proper. Does that make sense? So yeah, there is a lot of history between Ukraine and Russia, and that was going for a very, very long time. So whenever you're actually thinking that just now, whenever we are electing Trump in 2024, that's when things are actually going to be happening in the geopolitical level, then you have not been paying attention for a very long time, because this actually started way before that. The problem actually started way back in... It's actually several decades ago when you actually start thinking about that, because the USA was always a thorn in Russia's ass. That's the best way that I can tell you, okay? They couldn't actually move forward with whatever they wanted to do because the USA was in the middle. We were setting the status quo about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in the world. When the Russian Federation came to be in the kind of like in the 90s, at that point, first they had this guy who was Yeltsin, and he was actually pro-American, and the next person who took power, who has been in power for over 20 years, Putin, essentially was able to move Yeltsin out of power, and to this day, nobody has been able to say no to Putin. In 20 plus fucking years, nobody has been able to say no to him. Why do you think is that? Because he was surrounding himself by people who are either going to be obedient or he was going to get rid of them. And that was what's going on. Okay, so what did they need to do in order to defeat the United States of America? Go to war directly? No, that would be fucking stupid. You don't do that because they're both nuclear powers. So what they do is they destroy the USA from the inside out. How do you destroy a country from the inside out? By dividing the people. But not only dividing the people inside, but by taking them out of the places where they have influence. So all these treaties that they have around the world, like the Paris Accord for climate change and all these things that are important in the geopolitical level, the USA had a seat at the table. With Trump starting to attack all the NATO allies and starting to attack all these bilateral agreements with a whole bunch of other countries that he was having some sort of tantrum fit, that was incredibly convenient for Russia, because now what they were doing is, if you are actually at the table and you have something to say and you have an important voice and you say, hey, if you guys don't do what I'm trying to propose, then I'm going to walk off. If you have influence, they're going to say, oh, yeah, no, please stay, let's talk. But if the USA walks away from that and say, hey, I don't agree with what you guys are saying, then they're going to say, well, fuck you, you already walked off. Why did you walk off from the table? And we walked away from many of those important meetings that were occurring. So with the insulting of the allies, it made the world just think that the USA was a shit show. Even people who didn't really understand about the political discourse, they realized that the USA was becoming a reality show. Every day, there was some sort of crazy catastrophe that the entire world was talking about, and they became clickbait, and people just running behind with a shiny object about what's the next stupid thing that Trump was going to say, or what was one of his acolytes doing that was essentially a career killer for anybody else. But for this was just another day in the Trump administration. Well, that created this exuberant feeling that, okay, it's probably not the worst, it's probably going to get worse, or maybe we already hit bottom, we're going to bounce back. So it created all these emotions inside people's heads to say, well, we are probably going to be fine. But we were not fine. We actually got a lot worse, and we could see that during COVID. There was a lot of gaslighting, and Trump essentially destroyed not just the U.S. economy, but destroyed a whole bunch of other world economies that they were listening to the USA as the status quo of what we should be doing, but it was very mismanaged. And that is a whole different topic on its own, which are probably going to be dedicating a whole podcast episode just for that. But the problem is that instead of him listening to the experts and surrounding himself with the science, he was just giving some credence to some stupid people who don't understand science or who don't really care about that. People are trying just to pray away COVID, like by blowing it in national television by some televangelists. That did happen. Okay, so crazy shit like that did happen. And maybe a lot of people in MAGA, they were not actually paying attention from those events because they just listen to whatever Trump says, or maybe they already like him too much, or maybe it's because they don't really want to listen too much to what he's saying from other sources because they're going to realize the obvious, that he was not the person that they thought he was going to be in their minds. In other words, they knew that the more that they would listen to somebody else, they're going to find out that he's a fucking idiot, that he doesn't actually understand certain things that are very, very, very easy to understand. And that is why Trump is actually going to be surrounding himself now, even more than ever, by a lot of yes men and yes women. People who don't really necessarily care about what is correct and what is incorrect, but they just care about, okay, if I am loyal, if he says, jump 3 feet high and tap your head, you're going to do that. A lot of his acolytes are going to do exactly that without actually really thinking about what's going on. But what they fail to understand is that really for a government to work, you need to have some people that they first know what the fuck they're talking about, and second, that they can be articulating that truth to power. Okay, articulating truth to power. Hey, boss, what you're actually proposing is fucking stupid, is gonna fucking get us killed. Can you consider this and this and this and this and that based on this and this and this and that? Because otherwise you're going to have to experience this and this and this and that. And those consequences are going to probably kill or going to create a whole bunch of other mayhem that you haven't understood yet because you're too fucking dumb to listen. So that's what you need in government. You need people who are actually going to tell you not what you want to hear, but what you need to hear, and that they actually have the data and the information that is measurable, logical, and demonstrable for you to be able to say, okay, that is true. That is actually happened. It's not just fucking conjecture, which is what we're actually getting all the fucking time. We're just getting conjecture from all these other people. And that includes a lot of the fucking influencers. I was talking about that yesterday. People go, well, I think that this is going to happen. No, motherfucker, I don't give a shit what you think. What do you know so you can actually tell me what you know so we can make a plan based on something that has real, actual science behind it. So, of course, one of the moments that it should have been a wake-up call for everybody else, if they were already fucking snoozing for a long time, should have been when Putin and Trump were in Helsinki during his presidency, when on not just national television, but on the world stage, the reporters asked Trump, hey, do you think that Russia had a role to play on the 2016 election as part of the interference for 2016 election? And what was Trump's answer? Well, all my intelligence agencies and all the people who have all this data, they tell me that, yeah, that's what happened. But Putin said that, no, he didn't do it. So I'm just going to believe Putin. And what did he do next? He fucking disappeared in a room with nobody else from our fucking administration to put any safeguards, with Putin in a room for several fucking minutes, just with 2 translators, which we don't know what the fuck they actually talk about because they never fucking released that information. And now, a person like Trump, who is very easily dissuaded based on adulation or criticism, how do you think that a trained human intelligence person from the KGB was going to be able to perhaps exploit, even if by chance, even through elicitation? Elicitation doesn't mean that I ask you something directly. That means that I ask you an indirect question and I just going to start seeing, okay, from your demeanor, from your tone of voice, from the way that you move your eyes, I'm going to be getting my fucking answer. So he's trained to do that. And Trump, he didn't even know what the fuck NATO was. So you get to see this different dichotomy as far as what happens, okay? It's very easily to understand for anybody who has any sense of knowledge on geopolitics, so what were these problems that we were seeing and what we were actually trying to tell people on certain positions of power. Hey, can you please put a fucking safeguard just in case we are correct? Well, they didn't do that. The White House fucking failed you. The intelligence agencies, they fucking fail you. And I'm not actually talking bad about the Intel folks because probably they got that information, but that didn't actually make it to the person who need to make that decision. And that is my assessment, and I fucking stand by that. And we're going to see how that actually happened. And really, in the end, it doesn't even matter because chances are that Russia already has all that information and more than they want. First off, because a lot of the acolytes from Trump, they probably have security clearances and they're probably blabbering all kinds of information to another handler because they already probably have dirt on them. And you can see that by a lot of people, especially that they were very critical of Trump. And at some point, they became lapdogs, and essentially they're just like kissing his ass. And that includes a whole bunch of people who are being now even nominated for cabinet positions. And that there were cabinet positions even in the 2016 election. So this is not a magic ball that you have to actually figure out. You just have to fucking pay attention. But a lot of people, they don't pay attention and they don't connect the dots. They also had all these many classified documents, highly classified documents in Mar-a-Lago that Trump took without permission because Trump does not own classified information. Nobody does. The U.S. government owns it. But regardless, he took all these top secret SEI, which is highly classified information, and those SAP, which are even more sensitive than the SEI. So we're talking about incredibly damaging information if it falls into the bad hands. They had in Mar-a-Lago, in a fucking little theater area there open to the public, and they had it in a freaking bathroom and scattered all over the place. When those documents, they're actually supposed to be held in very specific rooms with very specific safeguards, and there's a whole bunch of controls for that. But now, what is for us to know that somebody just didn't go over there and start like taking pictures of that information is all over the place. Because in order for you to get to Mar-a-Lago, at that time you only needed to have $200,000 to get a fucking membership. And now you're going to be able to walk around all over the place and have placement access to the former president of the United States of America. Okay. Now, if you're a MAGA, like any regular MAGA, and you fucking show up out there, yeah, just find out to see if they let you sit down in the dining room or they don't fucking kick your candy ass out of that place unless you fucking have $200,000 back then. Now you need fucking $1 million in order to have that. So think about that shit. But in the meantime, also they have a whole bunch of other influencers, from the right. We find out that recently that there was the shadow company that was sponsored by Russia that was propping a whole bunch of right-winger talking points that they were giving those RTV, the Russian TV, and the TASS talking points verbatim to all these influencers to essentially say whatever they have going on. And you find out that these influencers, even though they had a little bit of clout, it went from these many followers to fucking millions of followers, like overnight. Why do you think is that? It's because they had already a plan in place. It's not rocket science. It's open. In fact, that's exactly what we found out that was the case. Now, the problem is that the left stood up to understand how they also played as far as criticism. So every authoritarian needs a foe. Every authoritarian needs to have some sort of enemy. So you can actually go and say like, oh, you are my enemy? It's okay. I need to have somebody to validate and start like talking shit about. Because otherwise, if they start going unabashed, it's just not necessarily the best thing, even though I know it's going to sound counterintuitive. I'll dedicate a whole episode just for that because that's a whole different science. And that's what it falls into psyops. But the problem is that whatever people didn't understand about that because of the complexity, it made the USA implode from the inside out because the more polarized we are, then it is only an adversarial nation, only an adversarial regime, the ones that win. And we are polarized, and they have won already. So they're going to be setting the status quo now because they're going to be looking like the grown-ups in the room, as opposed to the USA, because Trump has a tendency to lose his shit about stupid things, act like a toddler. He is going to give derogatory nicknames and burns and all kinds of other bullshit that he does. Yeah, the rest of the world sit down and say like, okay, is that normal? Do we want the USA to actually be in charge? Or maybe some other nation, maybe Russia, maybe China, maybe other places are going to be looking a lot more grown up than the USA because they are not acting like fucking toddlers. Oh, wow. They didn't think about that shit because now the USA was sitting the status quo. But if the USA loses the status quo, then what happens? You only get to set the status quo if you're the premier nation. But if you're not the premier nation, then you don't have shit. Your voice doesn't mean anything in the world stage. And the American exceptionalism that we have, it won't mean shit because of that. And that was a self-inflicted wound. So the USA is losing prestige around the world. And because we do have some flaws, okay? Nobody is perfect. But what was making America great for real was this diversity. Because diversity, what it is not many different colors of skins, not many different accents, not many different languages. Is the fact that you can see those blind spots and you can tell people in the same team that are wearing the same citizenship as yours, okay, the same colors as yours, as a nation, say, hey, you didn't see that, you didn't see that, you didn't see that, okay, let's address that so we can be stronger together. That is inconvenient for a nation that wants to fuck you up. So, if you're a MAGA voter, okay, so let me call you this bluff over here. So, okay, so if you voted for Trump and you didn't like Kamala Harris or whatever was the other person, was it because you actually knew the different policies? And I need you to really answer this to yourself. Or were you just listening to whoever was the talking head that was interpreting those things for you? Because if they were interpreting those things for you and you didn't actually fucking take time to listen to what was the reality behind that, and not just listen, but actually do the research and try to do the fact-checking objectively, not with the lens that they were actually giving you, then you fucked up. You did that. You did that to yourself and to the future. And it's actually probably going to take about fucking 40 years for this shit to be fixed on the short end. So many of the policies that Trump actually run into, like the tips tax that he was going to be taking out, or the healthcare fixing for everybody else, or making better wages, or the tax breaks and all that shit that was going to fix the economy, those were Kamala's policies. The difference is that he didn't actually articulate them. What he actually was running on was saying, hey, the Democrats are evil. This is a war between good and evil. They didn't actually define what fucking evil is. They also said, like, they don't like to have a Christian nation. What they also didn't fucking tell you is that there are like over 36 fucking thousand Christian denominations. And it's probably not your denomination, the one that they wanted to reign supreme from everybody else. So if you're a Mormon and you think that that's going to be reigning supreme, well, you're fucking stupid. That's not what's going to happen, okay? If you think that if you are just a Catholic, that's the one that's going to run, well, maybe the Opus Dei, they actually definitely have a lot of foothold, not just in the USA, but around the world. And they have the Vatican, and they have a lot more other sway that's been going on for like over centuries. So yeah, there's going to be a lot more that you have to contend. But if you happen to be a Jehovah's Witness, or you happen to be some of the smaller perceptions of the Christian faith, yeah, yours is probably not going to be included into this, even if you think it is, because Christianity is a bigger concept than just one religion. And I know that that's what they were actually saying. Well, they wanted to be a Christian nation. Yeah, which denomination? You didn't think about that. Yours? There's several other thousand other denominations. The Pentecostals, they make fun of the Baptists, and the Baptists make fun of whoever is the other person who handles snakes, okay? So yeah, Christianity is a very powerful world. It is a very powerful phrase, is a very powerful feeling. But which denomination do you think that they're talking about? Well, I'm telling you, in Russia is the Orthodox Christian denomination. So yeah, it's a Christian nation, but the Orthodox. Is that the one that is now going to be becoming the norm from this side of the world? You think that you, Baptist person in the South and the Bible Belt, is going to be having their own way to do things? Yeah, it's probably not going to be the case. All right, so this is it for this episode today. So I also have been talking about this thing for a long time with my books, Authoritarianism and Propaganda, The Puppet Master Tools, and Woke and Proud, The Charlatan's Inconvenience. Those are non-fiction, thought-provoking books. They're historical analysis for you to understand how propaganda has been taking a foothold on that. And of course, my website's www.halflifecrisis.com. If you go to the article section, you're going to be able to see that a lot of the things that I'm talking about here, I've been talking about that for years. And if you go to www.infoincontext.com, you're going to be seeing something similar as far as that, where I'm actually teaching you to think for yourself, because I'm going to tell you things that nobody else is going to be doing, okay? So in our next topic, your vote, your responsibility. Now you're done fuck up, so you better own up to that. So This one, you're probably going to need a blankie because I'm going to make you cry. And the fact is that if I hurt your feelings, it doesn't matter because they're going to be hurting your feelings as well. The difference that they don't give a shit about that. I'm still trying to save you. So, like it or not, we're stuck with this decision. All right, guys, we'll talk into the next episode. Take care. Bye.